but it's got to be part of the balance. And once you become a vegetarian, you're out of balance.
Right.
It doesn't matter how much you try, it doesn't matter what your belief system is, you've got problems. You're a vegetarian, you've got problems. Because little by little, you will become more and more vitamin B deficient. Unless you start taking supplements, of course, to compensate. So that's part of the problem of being a vegetarian. The other part is that oxalic acid, which is not being processed, which is not being expelled, now gets deposited inside the body. And this oxalic acid will get deposited either as a crystalline structure or as little rosettes, little bits of crystals, which are like solid little clumpy bits. And they could go anywhere. They could go into your tissues, they could go into your internal organs, literally anywhere. Now, there's a large proportion of women, I say large, there's a fair amount of them who, after many, many years of being vegetarian, of eating too many smoothies, too much of the wrong foods. The worst wrong foods in our modern culture are spinach, almonds, peanuts, cashew nuts. Those are relatively not too bad because they're only about 200 milligrams per little bunch of them. But even 200 is more than the body creates. And by the time you start to, throughout the day, you eat this, that and the other, it builds up. So it's rare for a person to end up eating less than 1,000 milligrams a day. A cup of tea, you love a nice cup of tea? There goes 60 milligrams of oxalic acid.
Including green tea, all teas.
I don't know about all teas, I'm just talking about that tea.
Black tea.
Black tea. Chocolate, dark chocolate, heavy duty. So now you're eating all these things and you've got all these crystals reforming themselves inside your body. And it can go to your vagina, like I was going to say, it can go to your vagina, no more sex. I know of a few women in the late 40s, early 50s, they can't have sex anymore. It's too painful. So that's the end of it. You know, it's not necessarily the end of sex, but it's definitely the end of vaginal sex. Like I say, I do know quite a few women who have damaged themselves through eating too many oxalates, i.e. too much spinach, too many almonds, too much coffee, too much tea, too much chocolate, dark chocolate, etc. Anyway, I know of some others where the oxalates are underneath the skin, and they touch the skin, and it feels like there's like little crystals underneath the skin. I know of others who the slightest bang will create capillary damage, and they'll get a bruise. You know, the slightest. You know, I mean, you should be able to whack yourself and be resilient. But if you've got this oxalic acid damage, this crystalline structure inserted in there, the slightest thing will create internal damage. And this is what's visible. But then there is the internal organs. You know, we're talking kidneys, we're talking liver, you know, talking heart, you could be talking brain, you could be talking anything. We just don't know. But it is cumulative damage. And a person like that, a person who's been a vegetarian for so long and says, okay, I can hear the death bell ringing, I'm going to try carnivore, okay? I'm just going to go for it. You can't. You cannot just suddenly say, I'm going to stop ingesting all that oxalic acid. Because if I do that, my body is going to say, oh, no more poison coming in. and then it begins to release some of that oxalic acid which is held in store. And when that oxalic acid begins to flow through your blood, it's going to pick up anything. Well, it'll pick up your vitamin B's for sure. It will also pick up any calcium, and if it goes down into your kidneys, it will bind in with the calcium. It could develop kidney stones. So it is really, really important that a person who says, I'm going to do this, says, I'll do this in a measured way, gradually. And there's a rule of thumb, there's a general global rule of thumb, which is you say, okay, I work out how much I'm taking for a month. So what is my average for a month? Let's say my average for a month on a daily basis comes to about 800. We'll say 800. I'm eating 800 a day. So the rule of thumb is say, okay, right, every week, cut it down by 10%. And there are lists. I've got lists on my website. There's lots of lists on the internet which tell you, and it's not a hard science, but it tells you roughly how much there is in each category of food. Mm-hmm. And once you've got that, you can then work out, well, okay, I'm going to cut down from 800 to say 700 for this week. Next week I'll cut it down to 600. So you're gradually working it down till eventually you get down to 50 milligrams a day from the external sources. Because you're already creating some internally.
Yeah.
So 50 milligrams from external sources.
Which is why I'm ready to leave caffeine and potatoes.
Right. So it's quite important, it's quite an important aspect to realize that although we're having a conversation as to how it's good to have meat, we also need to understand that if we have been damaged for so many years, we cannot just say, I'm just going to change. It has to be done slowly.
But so often, when people go on these diets and everything, it's always these drastic changes, isn't it? It's just like from day to night. It's so extreme. But what you're saying is we really need to take our time with it.
We do.
And so are all kidney stones, is that due to oxalate damage?
Apparently they can be from other causes, but that seems to be the major one.
Yeah.
And certainly if you went to a hospital with kidney stones, they would put you on a diet that would reduce oxalates.
Yeah.
But it's something that has to be done. It's best not to get to that point. It's best to say, okay, look at the list. What is my present consumption of oxalates?
Yeah.
And just cut it down gently.
Yeah.
Just work your way down. So after about 6 months, you're down to about 50 milligrams. And like I said, 1 cup of tea, that's 60 milligrams. Strong cup of tea, maybe.
Yeah. What I thought was interesting when I looked at that list is how, again, the things that we perceive to be healthy, brown bread, wholemeal bread, it produces more oxalates than white bread, even though we're told nowadays, you should having wholemeal products. I thought that was quite an interesting aspect. And there was another one as well. I can't remember it. But yeah, again, the machine of healthiness is perhaps the most damaging to us, I find.
It's insidious.
It's inverted.
Totally. However, it's only reflecting our internal disharmonies. So, we can't really blame all these people who want to make a fuss back out of us, because we are generating them out there to keep us sick. They're just, they're reflecting us.
Yeah.
So ultimately we have to take responsibility. But taking responsibility is not a question of punishing ourselves or forcing the change. Is understanding where we're at and accepting that and work towards a change.
Yeah. Incrementally.
So then the third one, of course, is the linoleic linoleic acid, which I've mentioned before. So we've got the lectins, the oxalates, and the linoleic acid.
Yeah.
So the seeds are damaging as seeds, but the seeds are damaging as linoleic acid, as in vegetable oil. And the damage is, like I said, to the mitochondria, because it's the wrong oil. It just blocks. We actually do need a little bit of linoleic acid, but we're talking like 1%, which our body can gather that no problem. You know, even a healthy cow which has been grown grass-fed, who hasn't been fed any soya products, will have 1 to 2% linoleic acid within its fat content. But cows, pigs, chickens, all these creatures that we eat, which are fed with man-made foods, they all contain high proportions of linoleic acid. And they end up containing about 30-35% of linoleic acid within their fat.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to give up the consumption of linoleic acid and you want to have saturated fats, then you need to avoid the fat from animals which have been grown under such conditions.
Yeah.
Now, once I became a carnivore, up till that time, I'd gone through a whole variety of diets to get to that point. And before becoming a carnivore, I decided to be, to cleanse myself, I would eat chicken and broccoli. That was my diet. So I was on a chicken and broccoli diet for about 6 months. And I mean, that had its own problems, clearly. But once I became a carnivore, I couldn't eat my own chickens anymore. They smelled horrible and they tasted horrible to me. I've been eating chicken for, as part of my process for years and years and years. And once I became a vegetarian, I couldn't eat my own chickens.
Why was that?
I had too much linoleic acid.
Mm-hmm. So what were you feeding them at the time?
Yeah, well, yeah, my wife, she was feeding them pellets, they get layers pellets and a few seeds. The fat content, something in there, I couldn't eat them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
My body was rejecting them. No way. So something had changed within me.
Yeah.
So when I was a young lad, my mother used to make these pots, Spanish pots, with chorizo and blobs of pig fat and a few vegetables here and there, sort of chickpeas, that sort of real heavy duty pots.
Mm.
And she'd boil that for a couple of hours and simmer and whatnot. And the fat at the end of the day was still solid.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to do that with pig fat nowadays, you'd be amazed how little of that is left floating around.
Yeah.
Because linoleic acid, vegetable oil fat, is liquid at room temperatures, whereas saturated fat is solid.
Mm-hmm.
So the pig fat, once it has too much of a percentage of linoleic acid, it dissolves very easily. Whereas the pig fat still maintains its structure to a great extent because it's solid saturated fat.
Yeah.
So this is part of the problem in this day and age. You see, if you buy eggs, I can't have, we've got two types of eggs. We've got the ordinary eggs, which I can't eat. And then we've got the other eggs, which I feed my chickens on a diet of rice and meat. That's all they get. And whatever they catch out there, all the worms and insect, wherever they get their hands on. And I can have a couple of those eggs every other week. Pathetic, really. So I can have about the egg yolk, not the white, not the egg white, but the egg yolk, which is the fat. I can have that every other week. But all of that applies to me because my gut has been damaged. It's repairing, you know, I'm coming to the end of it, but nevertheless, they're all knock-on effects of my damage. So I have to be careful. Other people do not have to be careful in the same way. However, linoleic acid is damaging to everybody, but it takes a long time before all the cells have been damaged in that way. But once they've been damaged, other things will go wrong.
Sure.
Including sunbathing. When we have too much linoleic acid in our bodies, we very easily get sunburned. When we do not have linoleic in our bodies, we haven't eaten it for a long time, certainly it's true for me now, I don't get sunburned anymore.
Interesting.
So I can lie down in the sun for an hour and I just brown up a bit, but I do not get sunburned. I do not go burny.
Yeah.
Which I used to when I was younger, quite easily. We know that in this day and age, everybody's crazy putting all these sun creams because people do burn very, very easily. Say, oh, it's because I'm fair skinned. No, because my wife's fair skinned, but she can sunbathe for a long time without burning either, compared to when she was younger.
Right.
So we create problems. You know, we are supposed to be able to exist in this world.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be able to go from one place to another without relying on a whole lot of chemicals to keep us going. So anyway, so those are the three basic ingredients of the vegetable kingdom, which together are quite deadly for us, which is why we shouldn't be eating vegetable. So I say we shouldn't be eating vegetables, but we can tolerate vegetables. As long as your intestines are whole, as long as you avoid the heavy poisons like spinach, rhubarb, chocolate. You know, if you were to eat only the foods which grow locally to your surroundings, you wouldn't have a problem, as long as you avoided the real heavy ones. Because if you did that, you would only have those poisons for a small amount of time, and then you would move on. But as long as you're eating meat, as long as you keep getting plenty of vitamin B's in your body, you would be processing those poisons. So you can eat vegetables, but you need to eat meat.
So what are you saying? We can get absolutely everything we need from meat. We don't need any vegetables whatsoever.
We do not need any. I don't eat any vegetables whatsoever. So I'll come back to this one because it's an interesting little sideline. 500 million years ago, we were herbivores. So we had a number of stomachs, the appendix being one of them at the time. And so we were able to process, leaves, bark maybe, grass, various leaves, whatever. We could process that. We found our niche and we could process those and we were fine. But then, I'm sort of digressing slightly, but then we were infused with 1.5% alien DNA. And that's another story. It's all in my website and other YouTube videos. And we gradually began to change. It was a slow process, but that process took us from being herbivores to being the carnivores that we are today.
Mm-hmm.
And in that process, our whole guts changed. And we became the stomach. What do we process in the stomach? We've got this muscle inside us, which is really, really strong, called the stomach. And what is it meant to process? Protein. It's meant to process meat. It's not there to process sugar. It's not there to process fat. It's not there to process roughage. It's only there to process meat. And we create acids for that. So we've got a stomach which is now specifically there to process meat.
Mm-hmm.
The protein, to break down a protein.
Yeah.
We've then got a secondary little stomach called the duodenum. And we've got a gallbladder and the spleen, the pancreas. So the pancreas and the bile, between the two of them, they're there to process fat. Not vegetable fat, they're there to process animal fat, so that it can be absorbed and to go through the blood barrier into the body via the lymphatic system. So then that mixture then goes through into the small intestine. You know, the small intestine is, I don't know, half a mile long. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but it's yards and yards and yards long. It's really, really long when it's stretched out. And that intestine has a process of absorption. Yes, there is bacteria that thrives in there, and we're quite concerned about that. But what is meant to happen there is for the fat to be absorbed and for the protein, which is broken down, to be absorbed.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes a mockery of the idea that eating meat will create damage in the large intestine, because there is no protein that makes it to the large intestine, because it's been broken down in the stomach, and that liquid soup gets absorbed through the intestine. That's why it's such a long one. It gives it plenty of time to get absorbed.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the fat is broken down by bacteria in our intestines. And the one thing we know about cells is that when they have plenty to feed on, they rapidly multiply, and they have certain lifespan, and then they die off. So what comes out at the other end in a healthy person, I'm going to say healthy, is dead bacteria and possibly some fat, if we've eaten too much fat that we haven't been able to break down and absorb because we've just eaten too much of it. So you would have this bolus of dead bacteria with some fat with it, goes through the large intestine, and it will come out the other end in its own good time. And because it's blended with a bit of fat, or too much fat, depending on your diet, it doesn't get dry, because the large intestine is designed to reabsorb the acids that come from the stomach. So like some of those nutrients, whatever goes through, goes into the large intestine and it gets reabsorbed. Nothing's wasted in that sense. So that bolus going through your large intestine will come out the other end, no problem. It doesn't matter if it's inside you for a couple of days. It will not dry and constipate you. But let's put it the other way around. So now you've got a person who eats roughage, lots of roughage, because roughage is good for you, we know that. So you have breakfast cereal, you then have your vegetables throughout the day, lunch and dinner. So you begin with a whole bowl of cereal, which is just roughage. You could call that roughage, really another word for that roughage is sawdust.
Dust.
It's exactly the same thing, it's sawdust.
Yeah.
So it comes out, so it goes through your body, your stomach doesn't want to know, your small intestine doesn't want to know, and guess what, your large intestine doesn't want to know either. And you better get rid of it quick, because if it hangs around, it's going to, whatever moisture has gone into that roughage is going to get absorbed into the intestine.
Mm-hmm.
So now you don't have a bolus, you've got a log trying to work its way through your large intestine. And, without being obnoxious or horrid in any way whatsoever, the anus is a small hole. A cow's anus is a big hole, but a human being's anus is a small hole, because we're not supposed to be forcing through it large logs of dried out roughage, which has to get out through us. So clear, people do, and you do, but then you get piles and you get little cuts into it and you get some bleeding, because we are forcing on an almost daily basis something to get through us, because we're ingesting too much roughage,
Mm-hmm.
which our body can't deal with it. And they say, oh, but roughage is good for your large intestine. Hold on a minute. So I've got a stomach which is nice solid muscle, right? It can cope with whatever it takes. My intestine, my small intestine, is strong, but it's very, very thin and it's very, very long. The large intestine itself, it's very, very thin for what it's supposed to be doing. If it's supposed to be processing roughage, then it's not up to the job, because the tissue is a very thin tissue. In fact, if you ever have cuts or damage and they have to operate in you, one of their concerns is that they might accidentally cut into the skin of the large intestine, and is going to create all manner of poisonous problems, because bacteria will get out of there. So in a word, no, we don't need roughage. It's not part of our diet. It used to be,
Mm-hmm.
but if you look at a cow's tummy, they've got strong muscles even in the fourth stomach. We haven't. We've lost that. It used to be when we needed to do vegetables, when we needed to ferment in there, then yes, the stomachs were strong. But it's a vestige. It has a function.
So what do you think about the idea of people with different blood types being able to eat certain things?
I honestly don't know. I'm a type O.
Yeah, me too.
So
that's meant to be-
allegedly I can eat meat.
yeah, the hunter-gatherer, isn't it?
But I don't believe that the blood type. I don't know the truth. This is just a supposition on my part, on the basis that we're all built the same way.
Yeah.
In that, we all have a stomach, blah, 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 and we all need protein and we need vitamins, so we need certain ingredients. So your blood type would be relevant to the nutrients that your body needs to process. You still need vitamin Bs.
Yeah.
So, hello. What did you do 150 years ago if you're a blood type? I mean, you didn't just, you haven't appeared in the last 100 odd years just to make the most of the fact that we've managed to create all these different vegetables now. you've existed before,
Yeah.
so you had to eat meat.
But I think it's something to do with maybe enzymes. For example, in Asia, like can drink less alcohol. They don't have the enzymes to be able to process alcohol, so they get drunk a lot easier. But opposed to someone that's a blood type O.
Well, I'm type O. I can't process alcohol.
Should any of us be processing alcohol?
Well, not really. Yeah. It's a poison.
Yeah.
It affects your mind. It affects your emotions. Yes, when you're in it, everything looks much more rosy because you've managed to detach yourself from within your ego, the structure of your ego. You've separated the mind from the emotions. Mm-hmm. So the mind is now not so dictatorial, telling you how to be, how to behave. Hey, England, whatever, Get a few more beers down your lad. Alcohol, we've always used that for thousands of years, but only because of the effects of removing us from the sensation of time. Because we don't know how to be in time.
Yeah.
Like when all our three brains are functioning, we are in time and we experience time, but not in a way that we want to run away from it. When our mind is telling us off all the time, the last thing we want to be is to be here in time. We want to be elsewhere. Mm. Oh yeah, kiss the drink. So much nicer. So there is that. Plus, also, we always need to remind ourselves that it's become an industry.
Yeah.
And so it is sold to us. It is sold to us in films. It is sold to us in books. Advertising is everywhere. Sometimes it's subliminal, but advertising is everywhere. So we think it's the norm. Oh, go home at night. Oh, let's have a glass of Chianti or whatever. In which films do you not see someone having a drink? Hmm. I mean, a drink and a ciggy, pretty much every film. So, and there's this whole promotion of, this is an aged wine, it's 20 years old and it's got all that bouquet, all of that is great, excise your taste buds in all those ways. But you drink the alcohol, you get the effect. Some people can deal with that and they drink more and more and more. People like me cannot drink it. So I just don't bother. Mm. So I never quite understand what's in it for other people. But I've been with groups of people where everybody's drinking, except me, and I feel like a lemon. Because there's all these people talking about all this bullshit. And they feel like they're having a great in-depth conversation. But I'm standing on the outside. And all I can do is laugh because it's...
lunatic asylum.
Sort of. Yeah. Not quite, but sort of. But, whatever. I don't have an issue with that. But yeah, if your aim is to be an integrated human being, then, like I said the last time, you need to give up all drugs. Mm-hmm.
All stimulants.
All stimulants, yeah.
But is that going as far as, like Hare Krishnas believe, like garlic, onions? Well, they're vegetables, aren't they? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's an interesting one. Years ago, I read this little bit about this Zen master. And some people were asking, and they said, "Oh, Master, can we eat garlic and onions?" And he said, "No." Okay, why not? He said, "Well, because you will smell, and the other," I'm paraphrasing now, "you will smell, and the other person will get angry." Because they have to put up with it.
Yeah.
So, but for your
practical aspect.
Practical aspect, yeah. And it's true. I don't do garlic or onions, and I don't smell unless I'm anxious. if I'm writing some article and I'm getting anxious about the whole writing thing, I'll get a bit smelly.
What's your smell if you're not smelling of garlic and onions?
Ordinarily, I don't have a smell to speak of.
But if you've got that pressure, you've got that anxiety because you're writing something.
Well, I don't know, but it's not very nice to other people.
No one's quantified it. I told you what it is.
Well, they haven't said it smells like this, that, or the other. No, but it's an unpleasant smell.
Yeah.
But people do smell unpleasant when they're anxious.
Mm-hmm.
We all picked up. It's an important signal for the rest of us, because a person that's anxious is a dangerous person. Because anxiety, fear, rage, we suppress a lot within us, but an animal that is very, very fearful is a very dangerous animal. Yeah?
Yeah.
If your back's against the wall. So we're finely tuned to the smell of anxiety in other people. Mm-hmm. It's not a nice smell. Most people put deodorants and suppress all of this. I haven't used any deodorants for the last 30 or 40 years. Yeah, 40 odd years. Yeah, nearly 70 now, so yeah, nearly 40 odd years. And I haven't used soap either. I use soap on my hands. And when I had hair, occasionally I would use soap in my hair if I'd been in a dusty environment. But that was it.
Yeah.
I would never use. I've never used. I have hot baths. I'll have a hot bath a few times a week, and I'll have a nice scrape. That's about it. But people, they use soap and they take all the oils from their bodies, and all the bacteria that thrive on their bodies.
Yeah.
They wash their hair 2 or 3 times a week. The more they do it, the worse it becomes, because the more you take the oils, the more your body will create oils.
Yeah.
To try to bring normality to the head. So they're vicious cycles. And again, it's all our culture. Our culture tries to sell out all these things. Toothpaste. We don't need toothpaste. And if you look at an advert for toothpaste, what do you get? Do they put a tiny, tiny little bit of it to clean? No. They put a nice big wad of it. Use plenty of toothpaste. And what's in that toothpaste? Chemicals. Some of them quite deadly.
Yeah.
Why would you want to use them? We all need to brush our teeth. But with certain, you can use a bit of bicarbonate of soda if you wanted to, just to clean your teeth with. But a good few minutes of brushing will do the job just as well. But it depends what we eat. The teeth going bad is more to do with what we eat than anything else. So there's so many things about us that we take for granted, but we're poisoning ourselves in so many different ways. Not just the food, but we are doing this to ourselves. We are creating the environment, and we are seduced into believing that all these things are good for us. We don't question it. If I go to someone and I say, I don't wash with soap, you're going to get the odd person who's going to go into a panic mode. And their panic is that their belief system, they can't knock it, because behind that, they want to be liked by other people. Oh, if I don't use soap, I'm going to smell. Other people are going to, you smell. I'm going to lose my friends, for example, yeah? So God knows what goes in their head, but something's going on in their head that makes it impossible for them to question the belief of, I mustn't use soap.
I want to belong. It's part of that cat culture as well, isn't it?
And that underlies a lot of our belief systems. It doesn't matter what the belief is, whether it's to do with any of the isms of our society, whether it's to do with politics or Christianity or religion or science, history. There's so many beliefs out there that dictate how we see the world, that we dare not question any of them.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, we have a drink. Whew, they go out of the window. We take the pressure off.
Yeah.
That's why we do it. Because we don't know how else to take the pressure. You know, we are our own worst.
Under the illusion that it's fun and it's enjoyable, but it's really just numbing us, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's like a bit of freedom.
Yeah.
A bit of freedom from the mind, from the criticism, from the self-censoring. That we're not even aware that we do it to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We do it all the time.
Automatic, yeah.
Automatic. So.
With regards to, the carnivorism, because there are some, negative press about it as well. For me, I think it's key that if you're eating flesh, you've got to also get the organs, the offal. We need those enzymes that are only available. What do you think about that?
Well, I read that years ago. Some people swear by that. And then there is another group that says you can have too much of that because, like, for example, the heart contains a lot of minerals which are not found in the same quantities in the flesh.
Yeah.
The same with the liver. So I thought, well, I used to eat it twice a week, so now I just have liver about once a week.
Mm-hmm.
Play it safe. I mean, I get plenty of vitamin B's from meat anyway, so I get an extra dosage from the liver. But so for me that works.
Yeah.
And I have the heart, but again, it's not all the time. Just have a little bit here and there. Those are primarily the two organs that I eat.
Mm-hmm.
I hate the tongue. Is the tongue an organ? I'm not sure. It's a muscle. So I certainly eat the tongue. But in terms of the internal organs, I eat the kidneys as well. So I like to have a bit of kidney.
Yeah.
Kidney, liver, and the heart. The lungs I give to the animals. Dogs, chickens, I give them the lungs. I think we could eat the lungs quite easily, but they're so slimy before they're cooked.
Mm-hmm.
That they're just, it's a sort of spongy texture, which is a bit too yucky.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, if I was starving, it wouldn't do me any harm to eat that. So anyway, yeah.
But it's fine if you wanted to just have steak every day. You don't need to get the offal.
I honestly don't know. I mean, I have steak. I have 2 meals a day, and I have steak in both meals.
Mm-hmm.
So, and occasionally one of those meals is a bit of liver.
Yeah.
But that essentially is my meal.
You see, we were talking about this earlier, weren't we? And for me, cooking and food is for the love of it, and you're saying that really it's just to survive.
Well, not for you necessarily. For me, it is.
Yeah.
I haven't been doing this for quite a while. I've weaned myself of the I live to eat.
Yeah.
Now I eat to live.
Mm-hmm.
Because food is not that great for me. I enjoy my meat, and I enjoy it raw better than cooked.
Mm.
So the more raw it is, the more I enjoy the taste of it.
I'm with you.
The more cooked it is, the less taste there is to the meat.
Yeah.
And I've noticed the harder it is to digest.
Yeah.
So raw I digest really easily, whereas cooked, especially if it's cooked for a while, all the juices flow out of the meat when you cook something. Then you have to add things from outside. Eat it raw, tastes great.
Yeah. I mean, my little treat as a kid, my granny used to take me to the butcher and I'd have a raw sausage.
Oh.
That was, those were fun days. Yeah.
Okay.
I really enjoy raw meat. They're like, steak tartare, carpaccio, or there's a Middle Eastern dish where they kind of combine it with cumin, lay it on a dish and take it with your fingers.
Right.
Yeah, I prefer to eat meat raw.
Yeah, what else is there to say? Yeah, so once I became diabetic, and I didn't know this, but to begin with, once I stopped eating the usual foods of sugary stuff, I started to get nosebleeds. Loads of nosebleeds. They were coming from nowhere. And I was eating all the lectin foods, I was eating the red peppers and the tomatoes. And I think that had something to do with that. But it also has to do with salt.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that when you become a carnivore, this is a question a lot of people ask, well, how much salt should I take? Because I used to get dreadful muscle cramps.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to think that the muscle cramps were not enough salt. Too much magnesium. I've been having magnesium salts. And I was a physical nervous thing. I was getting all these little muscles firing left, right, and center. It was way too much magnesium, and I didn't understand. It took me a while. And I need magnesium, but a measured amount. I used to spend an hour in the bath with Epsom salts.
Mm-hmm.
Way too much magnesium, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It was crazy anyway. So, too much salt. And gradually I've realized that actually I need very little salt. Of course, salt makes food taste very tasty. And now I don't have any salt with my meat anymore. I have one little pinch of salt a day, and that's with my bone broth, which is another important aspect of being a carnivore, that meat does not contain the protein that you get in bone broth for the ligaments,
Mm-hmm.
For the fascia. You know, there is some. If you eat it all, there is some. But really, having a cup of bone broth a day completes that cycle of nutrients that we need.
Yeah.
We still need some other things because of the deficiencies of the soil, but that pretty much completes it. And if I had too much salt, I would get nosebleeds. So I had to stop the salt. So eat to live.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets boring. Of course it does. So I eat because I need to eat. And that's it. Before, you know, I love cooking. I was always cooking. I was the cook for the whole family. They all regret my change. But, you know, and everything revolves around food.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree, you know, you sit and you have your meal and you have your wine and you have all these conversations, which are pretty much meaningless conversations, to be frank, but you have all these conversations because they're not conversations as to how I'm truly feeling, what's really going on for me, how to let go of some sort of emotion that's been bugging me that I haven't been able to express for whatever reason. So they're not conversations to clear the air, and you can't even have conversations that conflict with someone else's belief systems, because that leads to arguments. Because when you have a fixation on a belief system, if someone is different, it leads to arguments. So all very nice, but it's all bullshit. So I eat to live. So sorry. And yes, it does get very boring because my family, they come, they eat, they do their meals. But you know what I've noticed? Is that they have a meal. So I have a steak, maybe I have 1.5 steaks as a meal. And, you know, it's a small bowl, and I have that, and I'm satisfied, more than full enough. They have their meal. It's a plate twice as big as mine, half an hour later they go for seconds. Then afterwards, you sit around and what's it? Oh yeah, I got a munchie now. So about an hour and a half later they have the munchies, they want to go and eat something else. Because what they've eaten has not truly satisfied them. What they've done is they've eaten too much sugar, they've created a spike in their system, the insulin has come in, mopped up the sugar, and because they do it so often, they've released way too much insulin, and now their blood sugar level has gone below 6%. So now they're compelled, like an addict, to go and get another fix. It's got nothing to do with food, you see. It's nothing to do with nutrition. It's nothing to do with being satisfied. It's simply to do with the cycle of addiction.
And from this perspective, from your perspective, it's a distraction. We're distracting ourselves as we are with alcohol in a way, aren't we?
Well, to be honest, I distract myself, you know. I mean, it's all very well. This whole thing of when you eat, you eat. When you sleep, you sleep. Hello, hold on a minute. I'm a human being. I'm fucked up. I'm all over the place. Yeah, okay, there's more to me than that. But so sometimes, yeah, I just want to just chill. And I'll read an article or watch a little soapy whilst I'm eating something, and I distract myself. Yeah, I'm not gonna berate myself for being human. We're all human, right?
Yeah.
We're all human. I'm not trying to be,
No.
you know, one of these esoteric masters up there.
It's no zealotry.
Yeah, you know, I'm just an ordinary guy.
Yeah.
I've got some special bits going on with me, but I'm still an ordinary guy. There's absolutely nothing special about me. So yeah, sometimes I like to be distracted. Who doesn't?
Yeah. But maybe we are unnecessarily distracting ourselves. Like me with my coffee, I'm thinking about it's the morning ritual. It's this moment of grinding the coffee and like plunging it down. It's become a little pleasure. It's part of my identity.
I understand. I used to have the same thing when I used to roll my ciggies.
Yeah.
You know, it's the whole, and then don't forget the cup of tea to go with it. You know, like, so that afterwards, if I had a cup of tea, I must have a ciggy. Or if I'm having a ciggy, I must have a cup of tea. So, you know, or if it's not if I've got a ciggy, if it's not a cup of tea, then it's a little drinky of some sort, right? A little beer or whatever. We create these indoctrinations for ourselves. And then you say, how can I free myself of this addiction?
Yeah.
Well, it begins by freeing yourself of the indoctrination in your mind. You've got to wipe that away.
This is what I enjoy. This is why I enjoy doing this work.
Which? Wiping away the indoctrination?
Yeah.
How you doing?
Oh, not bad. You know, I'm work in progress. Yeah.
We're all work in progress, okay? For the whole of our bloody lives. So, what else is there? So, I spoke of kidney damage. Oh, yes. So, the muscle spasms. Because if you decide to become carnivore diet and you stop eating the carbs, but you've already got kidney damage, some people, the lucky few, they decide, okay, I'm going to go carnivore because it looks like the right thing to do. And yeah, I have issues here and there, but nothing to speak of. But they haven't got the damage. They haven't been damaged yet. They've been damaged, but not to the extent that their small intestines have got leaky gut. And so they can just go carnivore, and they're young people, relatively speaking. They haven't really poisoned themselves enough, and they can make the transition fairly easily. And what I mean by this is they can go from eating carbs to eating fat without too much problem, because the liver will create sugar, the carbohydrate that we need. It will create that. and the glucose. It will make glucose. So we don't actually need to eat carbs. So whatever they need, the body can create it. And they have no problem making the transition. And they're totally healthy. But for most of us who make the transition, once we've been damaged, we get all manner of problems. Some are to do with the oxalate, some are to do with the linoleic acid, some are to do with the fact that we've damaged our kidneys as well in the process. And we've become type 2 diabetics. And we cannot have the sugar, but we need to eat the sugar because our liver isn't creating the sugar that we need. And that is why I was getting the muscle spasms. It was, I needed a little bit of sugar, but I couldn't have too much sugar because my system cannot deal with it.
Yeah.
So I read of a person who would have half a cup of rice a couple of times a week, 2-3 times a week. I've experimented with half a teaspoonful of honey, and that was okay. Well, it actually wasn't, because I ended up eating more and more honey, and I had to stop that one.
Old habits.
I then tried a banana. Again, that didn't work. Too many bananas. He was sending me all into a diabetic space. Now I'm doing a pear. So I have one pear. I try to have the pear not too ripe. So it's sugar but not too sugary. Conference pear seems to be about right. And I can deal with just one pear a day. That gives me enough sugar for my muscles. So, we all have to find the balance, and it's a realization that we cannot just go from vegetarian carbohydrate to carnivore. We need to be intelligent about it, and
listen to the body.
And listen to the body, absolutely. With the oxalic acid, I used to get a lot of sleep in my eyes. And that sleep in the eye is actually the oxalic acid crystals. It's the body expelling them.
Yeah.
And I went through a period of that. It's all gone now. But for a period, I was getting that. So there's a whole lot of things that can happen to the body as you're sort of clearing out. And it can take years. One needs to be gentle with oneself because it can take years to clear. The most important thing, if someone is listening to us, I'm hoping there's more than just someone. If someone is listening to us and says, I'm going to go for this, I would say the most important thing to do, stop dead all vegetable oils. If nothing else, give up all vegetable oils, 100%.
Yeah.
Any oil in your house which is liquid, throw it away.
Yeah.
You do Nutella, what's it got in it? You do mayonnaise, what's it got in it? These are foods which are so like they're good for you.
Yeah.
If you go to a health food shop, so-called allegedly health food shop, most of the foods there are poisonous.
Fillers of the oils again, isn't
Yeah,
it?
they're fillers, oils, carbohydrate, chocolate. But it's all good because it's so nicely wrapped up. Look.
Health food.
Yeah, absolutely. They're poisons. They give us poisons. You think, yeah, but they're health shops. They're pseudo health shops because all that you're not a healthy person. You have not sorted out your shit. You are not a free brain being in practice, only in theory. You are filled with belief systems and criticisms and arrogance, more than likely. And you want to be healthy because things haven't been going well, so you go to the health food shop to help yourself to be healthy. But Your personal reality is one where you are maintaining the status quo of where you are. And it doesn't matter what shop you go to, you will always find the same things. Something that's going to keep you in the place that you are. It doesn't matter who you go to. If you go to a Western medicine, if you go to an alternative practitioner, to a health food shop, to a supermarket, it doesn't matter who you go to. They will all help to keep you in the place that defines your personal belief of reality. And that's the dilemma for humanity.
Yeah.
We are all individually creating our environment. I go to the shops. What do I buy? Steaks and mincemeat for my dog. There's got nothing else that interests me. There's nothing in a shop that is of any use to me whatsoever.
Mm.
And sometimes I walk around, it's all the same. Sweet counters near to when you have to pay.
Yeah. Even though it was meant to be banned, wasn't it? And then it's just come in
Yes,
and go.
You say, oh, they all have to make a living. Well, of course they do, but.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's where we are. I thought that I would be spending a lot more money by being a carnivore, but it's not true.
Yeah.
Because if you look at my cupboards, should I say our cupboards, it's filled with all manner of health food shop items. And they're all expensive. One of those jars would give me steaks for a day. And people don't think about it, but you buy so many condiments, so many of this, so many of that, and you buy so many sweeties and so much chocolate, so much of this. There's all these little bits you keep buying to supplement your diet, to make it interesting. And it is interesting because they've made it interesting, Variety is amazing. It's amazing what they've created out of salt, fat, sugar.
Yeah.
And wheat. Let's not forget wheat.
Mm-hmm.
And now, of course, and the fat is unsaturated fats. So they've created this permutation of stuff, and you buy and you've got this permutation around the house. It's all pretty much the same stuff. But it looks amazing, but you pay top dollar because you're buying something that looks different.
Yeah.
So anyway, we've probably talked more than enough for today. I'm sure there's loads we've missed. But you know what? Those of you listening, if you have questions, feel free to ask questions. I'm more than happy to converse with you and share my experiences on the subject.
Leave your comments below the video, I believe is the terminology.
Yeah, yes please. Or on my website as well, I've got a whole lot of articles to do with all these things. So, anyway, if you're there, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Sal. It's been informative as ever. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.